County option income tax. Would you be in favor of raising that if needed?
I really, with the economy being pretty tough right now, I would be against raising any taxes. I would be against that. There are going to be certain scenarios where you might have to consider it, but in general, it's going to be a last case scenario. I mean, you'd be foolish to say never, ever, ever will I ever think about doing that. You have to consider all your options, right. But that option would be the last one for me, because I just don't think people right now need to have their taxes raised. They're having enough difficulty just keeping the lights on, and really so no.
Okay. Well, kind of along with that is the whole issue. It's on the ballot this November. Property tax caps, writing them into the state constitution. Do you think it's a good idea at this point to write them into the Constitution?
That's one that I've really tried to look at, and I still haven't made a firm decision either way. When you look at the pluses to the property tax caps, you know where you're going to be. And if somebody, like for instance, if an out-of-state business is trying to decide between Arizona, Indiana, and 5 different places, they'll know exactly where they're going to be from a tax standpoint. Kind of like the shovel-ready sites. They know what they're going to get. So from that perspective, from a business standpoint, I think maybe the property tax caps might be a good idea. The Journal-Gazette reported that in 2009, only 24% of the county benefited from the tax caps. The other 76% of the county had their taxes go up, which what that told me is, and this is another thing that kind of bothers me about government, is it's presented in a certain way, because the way this has been presented is, everybody thinks, wow, my taxes are going to be capped at 1%. But if your taxes are at 0.7, it's already below 1%. So what's going to happen is that, guess what? Your taxes are going to go up. And based on that report by the Journal-Gazette, it sounds like probably 60 to 70% of the county, the taxes are going to go up to meet the tax cap. And the people who are going to benefit from those tax caps are the higher income houses. And I guess that just goes back to your personal ideology. I mean, if you're a fair is fair person, hey, whether you have a house that's worth $50,000, 1%. If you have a house that's worth $1.5 million, why should you pay more than 1%? This person's paying 1%, this person's paying 1%. Why should this person get penalized? And I totally understand that logic. Now me, if I had a $1.5 million house, I'd pay 1.5%. I would, because I love this country and I want to invest in this country. So to me, I understand both sides of the argument, but I guess I'd probably vote against them, to be honest, just because the majority is going to see their taxes go up. Mm-hmm. And that's another inconsistency in government that bothers me. As a business person, you want to be consistent. And you have, basically our governor, who is a Republican, who one of the biggest bullet points, less taxes. So we want to give you these tax caps. But a lot of people's taxes are going to go up. So that's an inconsistency that's bothersome to me, because it's being presented in one way and the end result is actually going to be the exact opposite. So,
would it concern you, as you've mentioned, county council is the fiscal body for, do you think that's going to be an issue down the road as far as budgets and incomes?
Oh, no doubt about it. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, last year's budget was about, I think it was $89,000. This year's proposed budget is going to be $89 million. And this year is going to be $85 million. And really, I talked to Tara Klutz, who's wonderful. Our auditors are wonderful, by the way. And they take a very fiscally responsible approach, which is the approach I would take. Once again, probably my business background is maybe pretty conservative from a spending standpoint. I mean, when you have your own business, you don't spend more money than what you have. But what they're going to have to do is they are going to have to borrow. They're only going to be able to, they figure, come up with about 80 of that 85 million. And they're going to have to borrow $5 million from the rainy day fund. But this is what I like about their approach. They'll never borrow that money if they can't repay it. Okay, so they already know how and they can't borrow it unless they dub it an economic downturn, or that we're in an economic downturn, and they dubbed it that, obviously, so that authorized that move, and they're going to be able to repay it. So if they were ever in a scenario where they were just scratching to get money, they'd never take those funds unless they knew they could put them back into the rainy day funds. So, but we're going to have to tighten the belt for sure.
Right.
Because between unemployment continuing to be high, obviously your income tax revenue stream is going to be low, and property tax caps, oh gosh, it's pretty close to, I think, 60%. I want to say a little bit under 60% of, it's either 60 or 70%, I forget. But property tax caps, we get that's pretty much 60 to 70% of the budget is derived from property taxes. So the fact that those caps are going to be implemented, more than likely, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt the budget. So,
well, and kind of the link between that and the county option income tax is that COIT is about the only thing that lawmakers have the county council. Of course, they can't do it by themselves. I think it has to be a county-wide effort, but that's one of the few things that you would have control over and be able to raise if you were short revenue. But the problem with that is just like you mentioned, it's such a volatile, especially, I mean, you look at property taxes have been pretty steady. You face that with COIT, which is up and down depending on the economy, and you could end up with problems.
Yeah. I agree. It's nobody, I don't think anybody really knows for sure. And that's probably another big reason why would we put the property tax caps in the Constitution? Why don't we try? I mean, Mitch Daniels has 2 years left. I mean, why don't we just maybe try putting them at those levels, before we implement them in the Constitution and they're carved in stone? I mean, that might be another option to consider. Let's maybe try it first, and then we'll know what the impact is going to be. And then we can decide, all right, do we really want to do this? Instead of stick it in the Constitution, let's see what happens. Could go either way.